Woman, an in-depth exploration of the world of women today with Samantha Dean.
Good evening. Tonight we continue our 10-week exploration of woman as wife. Our subject is birth control, and with me is Mrs. Ruth Miller, a medical social worker from Planned Parenthood of Buffalo, New York. Mrs. Miller, would it be safe to assume, in your estimation, in view of the recent zero population growth, that most couples in the United States use some form or another of birth control?
I would say that certainly 50% or more do. However, there would be some who, because of religious conviction, would prefer not to.
I see. Let's start off by reviewing the presently existing methods of birth control, and then we will weigh their relative merits and disadvantages, and then later on in the show we'll discuss what's new, what is being tested today for use in the future. So, would you review for us what's available today?
Well, there is the age-old rhythm method, which is primarily used by people of the Catholic faith. There is the condom, which is the only male contraceptive so far. There is the chemical contraceptives, creams, foams, and jellies. There is the diaphragm, which is an old, reliable method. And there is, in the last 10 or 12 years, the new pill, the birth control pill, and many new intrauterine devices.
How about sterilization and abortion?
Sterilization, and both for male and female, is a permanent method of birth control, considered about 85% irreversible now. The male operation is called vasectomy, the female new procedure, laparoscopy.
Right. We'll get on to more details about that, and actually I just wanted to bring up abortion as a means of contraception, though we won't go into it in any great depth because later on in the series we'll be having a program dealing with that exclusively. Let's start off with the rhythm method. This is virtually timed abstinence, is it not?
Right. It depends very much on the regularity of a woman's cycle, which is difficult to determine.
How do you determine this?
Well, in order to do this effectively, you have to keep a temperature reading, a daily temperature reading, plus a monthly calendar accounting of your beginning of your periods and the end of your menses. And after you have collected this material for about a year, then a doctor goes over it and helps you decide what seems to be your safe time and what seems to be your fertile time.
This is rather a lengthy procedure. What do you do for birth control in the meantime?
That's a good question. Many people during the 12 months they're collecting the data could find themselves with an unplanned or unwanted pregnancy.
I see. And there are many variable factors involved here, aren't there? For instance, stress, tension, anxiety, sickness. Can't all these disrupt the cycle?
Right. Ovulation can occur more than once a month in some women. Ovulation can also be delayed because of a cold or an emotional upset, so that it's exceedingly difficult to determine. Even when a woman is very regular, it's exceedingly difficult to determine when her fertile time is.
How would you rate the effectiveness of the rhythm method?
All I could say is that it's probably the least effective of any of the methods.
I see. The second method you mentioned was the condom.
Yes.
This is about the only method on the market at the moment which puts the entire onus of preventing conception on the male, right?
Right. This is the condom, or the sheath, safety, or prophylactic, 4 names for the device that is put onto the penis before intercourse. This is also the only method that prevents the spreading or the acquiring of venereal disease. And in this day, when venereal disease is at epidemic proportions in our country, we feel it's terribly important for people to consider this as an effective method of birth control as well as a preventative of venereal disease.
Right. This is also the method the U.S. Army advocates, isn't it, for its troops abroad?
Right.
What is the likelihood of manufacturer's defects occurring in a condom, and what's done to safeguard the public against this possibility?
The manufacture of condoms is supervised by the Pure Food and Drug Administration. Each condom that is American-made is tested electronically before it is packaged, and the effectiveness rating, the failure rating, is 0.1%, so that it's highly effective if used properly.
What is the approximate cost of the condom?
Probably in a drugstore around $2.50 a dozen, $3 a dozen.
I see. And this can be purchased at any drugstore without prescription?
Without a doctor's prescription.
Right. This is not the case, of course, with the diaphragm. The diaphragm has to be very expertly fitted, does it not, by a gynecologist? After you have been initially fitted with a diaphragm, how soon should you go back for a checkup?
Well, this is just one of the many different sizes of the diaphragm. The doctor has to do an internal examination to measure the size of the uterus and the mouth of the uterus, which is the cervix. And once the doctor fits the diaphragm, the woman should go back at least once a year for an examination. If she has a weight gain or loss of more than 10 or more pounds, either way, there is a good chance that the size would change. Also, after a delivery, the first 3 months after delivery until the uterus resumes its normal size, she would probably need a larger size during that period.
Yeah. There have been a couple of criticisms leveled both at the condom and the diaphragm. One is that they're not particularly aesthetically pleasing, and the other is that they tend to disrupt spontaneity. Do you feel these criticisms are justified?
Well, I think that a little bit of inconvenience might be better than a yearly pregnancy.
Absolutely.
And when I hear young people using this for an excuse and then are in the office seeking an abortion, I feel that perhaps a little bit advanced planning and preparation might have prevented a lot of unhappy, traumatic experiences.
Absolutely. Would you lay to rest for me a couple of old wives' tales regarding douching, both douching with a diaphragm in position and douching as a means of contraception?
Well, the diaphragm is left in for 6 to 8 hours after intercourse, and to be highly effective, it should always have a cream or a foam added to it to make it the 97% effective rating that it has. It is left in for 6 or 8 hours expressly so that the spermicidal cream or foam can act to immobilize the sperm cells. Now, if there is to be any douching, it is done after the 6 or 8 hours, and the removal of the diaphragm is that.
Otherwise, it would completely nullify the effects of the illness.
Now, as far as douching alone as a method of birth control, the medical profession feels that it's practically useless because conception and fertilization takes place so rapidly after intercourse that literally by the time the woman got out of bed and ready to douche, she might have already conceived.
I see. You mentioned creams, jellies, and so on. There are many of these on the market, and without mentioning any brand names, which is the most effective of the foams, the jellies, the creams, and the foams in the aerosol cans?
The aerosol foams are considered the most effective of the chemical contraceptives, which come with an applicator, and the woman has to fill the applicator with the foam, and then the applicator is deposited deep inside the vagina, and the foam is inserted before intercourse takes place.
Right. Let's talk about the IUD, which you mentioned. The one which is on the market now, which seems to be most popular, is the plastic IUD, right?
Yes.
How is this an improvement over the original stainless steel IUD?
Well, years ago, I believe there was a lot of problem with the stainless steel in causing infection. The plastic seems to be a lot less of an irritant and has proved very effective. The one that's probably known throughout the world is Dr. Jack Lippis's loop, which is the double S-shaped loop, and this is the inserter that the doctor uses to get this up into the uterine cavity.
Could you explain the principle on which it works?
They don't really know for sure exactly how it works, but they know that it does. It seems that in some mysterious way, the presence of a foreign object in the uterus somehow interferes either with fertilization, or if fertilization did occur, it would interfere with the process of implantation in the uterus.
So this is virtually a mini abortion which is taking place each month.
Well, not always or not necessarily, because if the theory is correct that it speeds up the travel of the egg through the fallopian tubes, so that the egg is moving so rapidly that it cannot be impregnated or penetrated by a sperm cell, then no fertilization takes place at all.
One thing which always makes me curious is what keeps it in position? What makes it, what prevents it from moving around ever so slightly but enough to set up a friction?
Well, it adheres to the walls of the lining of the uterus. The reason the Lippus loop has been so effective is because they feel that it so closely resembles the outline of the pear-shaped uterus that when this goes in place, it goes in straight and then it slowly springs back into shape, and then it is just lying against the walls of the uterus. Now, it is true that some uteruses reject this foreign object, that muscular contractions start, and there is a small percentage of women who expel the loop.
What is the percentage of women who get pregnant with the loop in position?
Well, the loop is considered about 97 to 98% effective, with about a 2% failure rate.
I see. Well, with that 2% failure rate, let's hypothesize you did get pregnant. What would be the chances of, say, rupturing the placenta, damaging the fetus with one of those in?
There is no harm to the baby. If a woman becomes pregnant with the IUD in place, they usually leave it in rather than run the risk of removing it and damaging the embryo that way. So it stays in place, it goes off to one side. As the baby starts to grow, the embryo grows and develops, the uterus expands, and the IUD never enters the sac that it contains the fetus. And in each case where this has happened, we find that the IUD is found in the placenta or the afterbirth.
And what are the chances of hemorrhaging severely?
A small percentage of women notice increased bleeding with their menses in the beginning during the adjustment period. They might also notice that their periods start and stop and come more often than once a month. But a very small percentage, I can't give you actual figures, but a very small percentage of women actually hemorrhage. The thing is that some women, if they find the minute the bleeding is heavier than they were used to, sometimes panic and feel that this is hemorrhaging, but it usually is not. We feel that if a woman is bleeding so heavily that she has to change her pad every hour, that would be considering hemorrhaging, and she needs to see the doctor or a hospital immediately.
What is the approximate cost of the IUD?
Well, in a private gynecologist's office, the price could vary from $25 to $50 to $100 for an insert. At a government clinic, it might be free of charge. At a Planned Parenthood center, it would be based on a sliding scale income, patient's ability to pay according to her income.
Before the show, you were telling me about a later development in the IUD field. That was called the Dawkins shield, right?
That is one that is also used, and it looks like this. It is plastic also, and this one is able to be used in a woman who has not ever carried a baby. We call that the nulliparous woman. Whereas the Lippus loop seems to have been too painful to insert before a full-term pregnancy and too difficult to retain because the uterus expels it. The Dawkins shield has been quite successful in being inserted into the woman who has never had a baby.
How does it compare from a cost point of view?
I would say similar.
Similar, I see. And the next method you mentioned, I think, was the pill. Now, the pill has been on the market, you were telling me, since 1960 and is used by approximately 8 million women in the United States. Is this then the most popular method of birth control right now?
Right now, I would say it probably is, and as far as effectiveness rating, it is still considered closest to 100% of every method. But I should say here that we're still looking for the perfect contraceptive. And by perfect, it would mean one that agrees with everybody, has little or no side effects, is inexpensive enough to be accessible to every woman who would want it, and would also be easy to tolerate and 100% effective, and we haven't gotten there yet.
What does this pill contain, and how does it work?
The pill is the first method that interrupts one of nature's normal processes. It prevents ovulation by introducing into the body two synthetic hormones, estrogen and progesterone, which closely resemble the hormones that a woman's body gives off once she does become pregnant. The hormones that are given off after pregnancy prevent her from ovulating during the 9 months of her pregnancy. Now, by introducing two synthetic hormones by use of the pill, the doctors often say you are tricking your body or fooling your body into believing you're pregnant, so that you're simulating a pregnancy. And in this way, you are preventing the monthly egg from coming out of the ovary and traveling through the fallopian tubes. And if it doesn't come out and it isn't in the tubes, then fertilization cannot take place.
I see. There are many different pills on the market, are there not? How would you know which is the correct pill for you?
Well, there are probably 15 to 20 different brands, a lot of drug companies making a lot of money on the pill. When a woman goes to her doctor, he usually has one that he prefers. But of course, close medical supervision is necessary, and a doctor does a medical history. And if there's any contraindication, if a woman has had any blood circulation problems, any history of cancer in her own body, or any indication, diabetes, any indication that the pill wouldn't agree with her, the doctor would so advise her.
One has read, and I'm sure everybody has read, about the dangerous complications which are a possible side effect, and I was just wondering if you had any statistics which show just what percentage of pill users are afflicted by these dangerous side effects.
I don't have statistics. I know that a few years ago we had that scare when the British report came out on the pill, and as a result the Congress of the United States had hearings on it. Many people panicked and went off the pill. There was a increase in pregnancies over the next 9 months to a year, but it was declared to be perfectly safe under close medical supervision. The thing that has been definitely established is that there is a relationship between the possibility of thromboembolism or blood clotting with taking of an estrogen-progesterone combination.
How would you recognize in the initial stages the symptoms of blood clotting?
Well, some of the early signs of trouble in general might be chest pains, leg pains or cramps, any numbness in fingers or toes, any severe headaches that are really blinding headaches, pounding in the temples, and these should be reported to the doctor immediately as forerunners of a problem.
What is the reliability factor with the pill? What happens if you miss a day, for instance?
Well, the pills normally are started on the 5th day of a woman's menstrual period. If she forgets one, she should take it as soon as she remembers it and hope and pray that it wasn't too late. If she misses more than one pill, in any one month, then it is suggested and recommended highly that she continue taking the pill, but that she use an additional method of birth control for the remainder of that month, such as the foam or condoms, until the package is completed and the next period has begun. This is a double precaution about the missing pill.
What are your chances of being able to conceive right after you come off the pill?
There has been a lot of controversy and two schools of thought about that. I don't think they've resolved it yet. There was one research team that felt that after your body has been used to taking pills for, say, a couple years, and then you wish to conceive and you stop the pill, that it might take your body a good 6 months to a year to begin normal ovulation again. And then there was another research team that felt immediately after discontinuing the pills, a woman might be highly fertile because her ovaries might start releasing more than one egg a month, which would make her more susceptible. This pill is not to be in any way confused with the high fertility pill that is causing multiple births, and we get lots of questions about that. Am I going to have twins or triplets or quadruplets later? This is a different dosage completely. I would like to say here that when pills first came out in 1960, they were 10 milligrams per pill, a very high dosage of the two hormones. And we were seeing a lot more serious side effects at that point. But in the last 11 years, the pill has been reduced to 10 to 5 to 2.5 and now 1 milligrams. And with the lower dosage pill, there are many less complaints.
And what's the approximate cost of a month's supply?
Well, again, in a drugstore, probably $250 or $275 a package. At a federal clinic, they might be free. At a hospital or a Planned Parenthood clinic, they might be based on income.
I see. Let's talk relatively briefly about sterilization and the new tubal ligation which is now being offered.
That is the laparoscopy.
Right.
Originally, it was a serious operation with a very large incision. The new technique has been so popular lately that the phone doesn't stop ringing about it. There is a very expensive instrument called the laparoscope that is inserted into the navel of the woman. At the end of this laparoscope, there is a light and a magnifying lens, which enables the physician to locate the 2 points on the fallopian tubes that he would like to cauterize electrically. And then the incision is so small that only a Band-Aid is needed to cover the opening.
That's how it gets its nickname, the Band-Aid operation.
Right.
What is the degree of reversibility?
At the moment, I believe it's considered irreversible, or at least 85% irreversible. They're hoping to make it reversible.
That's one of the aims for the future.
Right. And the doctors would like a woman and her husband to be very certain that they've had the number of children they wish to have before they make this decision, because it may be permanent.
Right. Let's get on to the future propositions. What is being tested now for use in the future?
Oh, there are lots of exciting things on the drawing board. Under study right now is the copper T, which I have here, a plastic intrauterine device which has copper mesh wound around the stem. The addition of this non-toxic metal is supposed to be an added preventative against pregnancy. It still is under study, under research, has not been approved by the Drug Administration. If it proves to be effective as they hope it will rate 99% like the pill. But we don't have enough facts and figures in yet to know for sure.
What else is on the drawing board?
The other things are a new intrauterine device that is in the shape of the T, but instead of the stem having copper, It contains a milk-like substance called progesterone, which we have in our pills. And this will very slowly, daily release a minute amount of progesterone, so that this will be combining the intrauterine device's effect along with the hormonal effect, like the pill. And that is for the future.
How about the male pill?
The male pill is still under a great deal of question. There is a subcutaneous capsule that they're talking about that would be inserted surgically, perhaps in the armpit, and this would give off minute amounts of testosterone, a male hormone. But this has to be very carefully evaluated, because so far they have found that while it might interfere with male fertility, it will have some other side effects on the body that may not be wanted.
Right. So that's basically it for the future, is it?
And then there are some oral steroids, which have reached the most advanced point. Drugs that are being studied that, when taken, will actually alter the endometrium, the lining of the uterus, that might prevent implantation of the egg.
I have one question that I meant to ask you earlier on. The necessity for birth control during the menopausal years. Is this vital?
Very important. This is a time in life when no woman wishes to become pregnant and could find herself pregnant if she doesn't use her birth control method for 12 consecutive months after missing a period. She could become pregnant.
And how about the breastfeeding mother right after having given birth?
Right. There are a lot of mistaken bits of information about that. A woman is immediately fertile after pregnancy and delivery, immediately fertile after an abortive procedure, and needs to use a contraceptive device. And this is also true that the nursing mother is fertile and would need a method.
Mrs. Miller, thank you so much. This has been extremely informative, and I'm sure will have helped to allay much of that 28-day anxiety syndrome. Good night.